Hi, this is Segfault, and welcome to Basic Java Programming. Today we're going to talk about basic object-oriented programming, and we're going to use a few different classes to show this. I'm going to be using Ubuntu today. You can do the same thing in Windows, it's not any different. But we're using Eclipse just like we were using before, and you can see I built 4 different classes here. To kind of show you what the idea is. And the whole idea behind object-oriented programming is to represent real world things as objects, and also there's a lot of benefits to this, like you don't have to necessarily rewrite code as much, and it'll take more time in the beginning, but in the end it'll save you time, and reorganizing your code and rewriting things later on will be a lot easier, and you can add new code without having to rewrite all your code. That's kind of the whole idea behind object-oriented programming. And until now, we've only been using procedural programming, and from now on, we'll probably be using all object-oriented programming unless there's something simple I wanted to show. So we're going to do this today with cars, vehicles, trucks, those sort of things, to kind of give you an idea of how it works. So what you usually have is a superclass or an abstract class, and you have child classes that inherit member variables and member methods from the superclass or the abstract class. And so what you do is you have a public class that you name, and you call it an abstract class. And what that means is it's a superclass for child classes. So anything that this class has, its child class can access and has its own basically version of. And so one of the ways you want to give that access, normally before we talked about like private variables and public variables and private methods and public methods, we're going to introduce a new security type called protected. And the idea of a protected variable or a protected method is that it's private to everything that's not a child of the abstract class, but it's public to the children of the abstract class. So it's kind of an in-between between public and private, basically. And so I created some variables here with a default constructor and just some getters and setters. We'll explain those more, ways to access the variables and set the variables. Okay. Then we have a truck class. So our first class is a vehicle class, and it has just some basic vehicle information like the wheel size, the number of wheels, the number of doors, engine type, and you can always add things like maker, model, that sort of thing. And we have a truck class. You notice it only has one variable, a bed size, right? Pretty typical. Trucks usually have beds, and like for example, cars don't have beds. So the truck would have, this is a variable that you couldn't put in the superclass because not every vehicle has that, so there'd be no point to it. So usually in a superclass, you try and put variables and methods and stuff that apply to every type that's inheriting all these sort of things, all these variables and methods. So the truck, you see a public class truck extends vehicle, and basically this extends a verb, takes whatever methods and members that are in vehicle here, and basically just pastes them into your class here. So you'll notice something like, excuse me, you have a default constructor here, right? Which is, if you instantiate a truck object, it's going to set the bed size to 6.5 feet, and then you could use the getters and setters to change that, right? Or you have another constructor that brings in all these parameters and sets all the variables that this truck has. Well, you notice number of doors, number of wheels, wheel size, there's no variables in the truck class. Well, that's because it inherits it from the vehicle class. So the truck has all these member variables. So instead of having to write, if you're going to write let's say storage code for, I don't know, like a dealership, and you wanted to store all these different types of vehicles, it's a lot easier to have one main superclass that has all the basic information, make, model, all these sort of things, instead of writing a truck class, a car class, all these sort of things, and have to write all these variables over and over again. It's easier to just inherit the variables. And also just look cleaner too, it looks nicer, right? And one last thing I need to mention, you can only ever extend one superclass. You can't extend multiple superclasses. And we'll talk about interfaces and stuff later, how to add later. But right now we're sticking with superclasses and child. Our superclasses sometimes called parent classes, so parent and child classes. Makes sense. And then anyway, so we'll see this truck class inherits these variables, right, without actually being in the class. So let's go over the tester, right, and we'll see, okay, bed size, well, that's fine. We know the bed size here was already part of the truck class, so it's not surprising that you can use a getter to get that bed size and display it, right? Not surprising at all. But this get engine type, well, wait a minute, there wasn't a get engine type in truck, right? But it inherits it from vehicle. So we'll see when we run this, like so, pull up the console. Oh, look, there it is, engine size. Well, 1.8 liter is not very, no truck has a 1.8 liter engine. If it does, you probably should get a new truck. But that's just showing you it inherits the vehicle class. So let's say you want to change that. You want to create a new truck with maybe more fitting stats. This is the stuff that my truck has. But anyway, so and the Dodge Ram 1500 revised, right? And now we're going to do the get engine type. You'll notice that save this and run it. Oops, run it. It shows that it overwrote the engine type and the other constructor. So these other constructors are really useful too to build new types. You can have multiple different types of constructors. It's instantiated as a new object here, but it gets all these parameters. It overwrites everything and builds a new truck with these parameters. So you could actually have multiple versions of these constructors. You also notice too, if you have a vehicle constructor that has multiple parameters and you run a new one in the truck class, it will override those parameters. So that's kind of a basic idea of object-oriented programming, building objects from other objects and going on from there. And you kind of want to have one class for each object, so you want to kind of build it out. And if you have a bunch of classes that have a bunch of things in common, you can make one superclass that has a lot of the information, a lot of the variables that a lot of the member methods that the classes will use in one superclass, and then inherit that class and not have to write the code 18, 20 times or whatever. Especially in very, very, very large projects, it can become a real pain. And you can also reuse your code. It's just it looks a lot cleaner, it's a lot nicer. It saves you time, it's better in a lot of ways. One last thing I want to talk about is actually commenting classes and once again my wife's laughing at me. Commenting, I love you. Commenting code. You want in Java, C++ and other languages kind of comment a little differently, but in Java you want to generally have your variables on top, then your constructors, and then your getters and setters, and then any other methods that you have. It's kind of how you want to do it, and then you want to comment them that way. You also notice too that before we didn't use any of these what are called Java docs. These are just comment, how do you say this, kind of pointers where these are keywords that are saved that when you look it up in Java docs, it'll say, oh, summary. It'll just say the name of the member and then what the summary was. And it's kind of it's better organization, which looks better. And so that's what you should definitely use those whenever you're building a class. And also, too, whenever you're in class, you shouldn't do what I did here and just have one getter for these 4 or 5. What is it? Four functions, 4 methods, and then functions is the same term as methods in C++, but methods are what they're called in Java. And then these 4 here, you should have an individual comment block for each method. But I just wanted to show just a quick example of how you do this. So that's just a quick example of object-oriented programming and building superclasses and abstract classes. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them and e-message me if you have any other questions. And thanks for watching. And if you like this video, please like it. Thanks.